This is legislation today on a series of important issues. First, we'd like to discuss introduction number 449. This ensures that city students and parents can count on uninterrupted and reliable bus service when they return to school starting this coming Thursday. It's sponsored by Council Member Danique Miller. I'd like to thank him for his leadership on this issue, and just want to say, as a public school parent myself and a parent who had my children ride school buses when they were younger, every parent is concerned that safety be our #1 focus when it comes to our school buses. To achieve safety, we need experienced drivers. We need experienced matrons. We need folks who know their routes, know their neighborhoods, know the parents, know the kids, know how to serve them. This is such a fundamental need because in the end, we go to so great an extent to ensure safety. We have to make sure we do it consistently. And we can't do it in one part of our school system and fail to do it in another part. So our school buses are a crucial point to protect our kids, and that's where experienced professionals come in. And by the way, obviously a disproportionate number of our special needs students rely upon the school buses. We have a special obligation to them to provide experienced, quality professionals to help them. It's tough for our kids with special needs. It's tough for their parents. They need to know that the school bus service will be as good as it can be and as safe as it can be. And that's why this legislation is so important. It also offers to these hardworking individuals who serve our children a measure of financial security. It gives people who have safeguarded our children every day a chance to have some decency in their own economic circumstances. So it's a very great importance to the whole city. It's particularly of great importance to parents. I want to thank one of those parents who cares deeply about these issues, Corinne van der Donk, who is here with us today. Corinne, where are you? Thank you very much, Corinne. And her son has special needs. She knows that the days when things go well are something she hopes for, and the days when the ride doesn't go well is something every parent feels deeply, and that what Corinne yearns for and every family yearns for is professional drivers and other personnel who will get their child smoothly and safely to school and help minimize that challenge on top of the other challenges they face. So this is really legislation that gets to the heart of what we do in public service. It creates a one-year grant program for eligible bus drivers, attendants, dispatchers, and mechanics. And the eligible employees are those who currently work at one of 16 bus companies awarded the contract for the 2014-15 school year and worked for the bus company that had a contract that ended in June of 2014, or worked for a company, excuse me, that previously provided bus service and also were on or eligible to be on a Master Seniority List. So it's very clear the specific experienced personnel that we're trying to reach here. And of course, they have to be able to demonstrate that they're currently earning a lower hourly wage than the wage they earned when they last worked for a school bus contractor. So there's a very specific series of measures to make sure that the right people are reached. The grant program will be administered by the Department of Small Business Services. The grant is capped at $42 million and will sunset after the 2014-2015 school year. And the law gives us time to pursue a long-term solution. We will pursue that solution in Albany, and we know that there's a lot of support in Albany in the legislature to make long-term changes, and we'll work for legislation, hopefully as early as the end of this year, to allow wage protections and benefit protections for our school bus personnel. I'm joined today by my colleagues in government, council members Danique Miller, Danny Drum, Matthew Eugene, Antonio Reynoso, Margaret Chin, and Ben Kalos. I want to thank the City Council for their speedy action on this important issue. And I'd like to invite a couple of our colleagues to speak, and I'm going to start with the bill's sponsor. He is a chair of the Committee on Civil Service and Labor, and he took the lead role on this important issue. I want to thank him for his leadership. Councilmember Danique Miller.
I'm getting kind of used to that there.
There you go.
There you go. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you so much. Thank you, most importantly, for your leadership on this issue. The value of this legislation cannot be overstated. I am very proud that the City Council and the Mayor have put this plan into action. It potentially saves thousands of jobs for school bus workers, keeping the most experienced and well-trained operators and matrons in order to provide safe transportation for our children. I've met many of these families, as well as school bus workers and contractors, over the past few months. Back in March, we held a hearing, and we've delved into this issue, and we understood the issue, the concerns of the workers, the impact that it's had on families, working families, and most importantly, our most precious cargo, our children. School buses serve as the first and last line of contact between our children and the schools on a daily basis. The educational experience that they undergo is framed by the contact, and this contact is essential to ensure that they have a positive experience. I would like to point out that we have a number of family and parent organizations in this room who are our advocates and that we've met over the last few months. And I'd like to echo one that may be in the room where she said that by no means is the transportation of special needs children a low-skilled and a low-wage job. I thank Mayor de Blasio for his leadership on this matter and for his administration and all the work that they've done, and for Tony and Bob, who's not in the room, putting up with myself and the rest of the members and going back and forth on this legislation. Today, this bill signing represents a victory for the city of New York, for our children, for working families and working people. Thank you again.
Thank you very much, Councilman. That Tony and Bob, the councilman referred to Deputy Mayor Tony Shores and our Labor Relations Commissioner Bob Lynn, and they did extraordinary work to get to this positive resolution. So I also want to credit them. Now, the chair of our Education Committee, Councilmember Danny Drum.
I actually will pass, Mr. Mayor, because I have to speak on the other issue.
The people thank you. And now, let the record show this man is a patriot. Now, a council member who's many times raised to me the safety concerns, the concerns of his constituents who are parents, also spoken up for these drivers who give so much to our communities. Council member Matthew Eugene.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'm a good patriot also, but I want to speak on behalf of all the bus drivers and Metron. Let me first and foremost thank Mr. Mayor for his dedication to help the hardworking people in New York City and his leadership on addressing this very important issue. And I want to thank also and commend my co-sponsor, Councilmember Miller and Councilmember Drum, and all of the wonderful colleagues who work hard to pass this very important legislation. And I want to thank also all the advocates. Let me say that New York City is a city where people come from all over the world to work hard to make the city better and also to get a better quality of life for themselves and their children. And we know that the children in New York City, they deserve the best that the city can provide. And there are people who have been working hard for those children, protecting them, driving them from school and back home. They have experience. They have been doing that with love, with expertise and skill. I think they deserve also the piece of the American dream. They deserve that everything that the New York City can provide to the hardworking people. And at the time when we are trying to improve the quality of life of hardworking people by passing legislation to increase the minimum wage and also to pass legislation to protect, the paid sick day, it makes sense that we give to the hardworking drivers the same opportunities. We cannot deprive them of opportunities and benefits that they work so hard to acquire. And I want to tell you that we have been fighting hard, and I commend Mr. Mayor. He keeps his word all the time. He told me, Matthew, I'm working on that. Don't worry about that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I want to tell you that many of those bus drivers that go to my office sharing with me that it was very difficult for them to pay their rent, to pay their mortgage, and to sustain their families. I think today is a great day for them, great day for the children, great day for New York City. And I think today, this legislation is going to make a big difference in the life of those hardworking bus drivers and matrons who have been protecting our children with love and caring. Thank you very much.
Thank you, brother. Okay, we're going to ask for public comment. One person has signed up, and I mentioned her before, Corinne van der Donk. We welcome your comments.
Thank you. As was mentioned before, my child has special needs, and he has been receiving bus transportation for the last 8 years. Each school day, he spends an average of 3 hours a day on a bus. Over the years, we have experienced many problems with our busing. Just as an example, one year, his scheduled routing placed him on a bus for 6 hours each day. Now, most of those problems over the years did not come from the matrons and bus drivers. In fact, it cannot be underestimated how important these men and women are that work with my son each and every school day. Under the right circumstances, it sets my child up for a successful school day. Under the wrong circumstances, his entire day is shot. Now, my son last year was lucky enough to be on a bus with a great and very experienced bus team. Once the usual kinks were worked out, my son never arrived late for school, even during those crazy snowstorms. And he was never yelled at, which has been different over the years. But I heard accounts from other parents about the nightmares their children were experiencing with the new and inexperienced drivers and attendants that started working last school year. City Council heard testimony of the same during those hearings in March that were just mentioned. So I, as a parent, wholeheartedly applaud this new bill that is being signed by our mayor, Bill de Blasio, and our city council. We will never know what tragedies have been prevented by signing this bill. Thank you.
Thank you very, very much. Just a moment in Spanish, and then we will sign the bill and ask my colleagues to come over and join me for it. Esta nueva ley asegurará que los padres y estudiantes de la ciudad de Nueva York tengan un servicio de transporte escolar confiable cuando comiencen las clases en septiembre. La ley ofrece seguridad financiera a los choferes profesionales que llevan a sus hijos a la escuela. With that, let's go sign the law. Now, I'm going to talk about Intro 292. Intro 292 is so important because it promotes transparency related to our city's jails. Been a lot of discussion in this city in the last few months, and rightfully so, about the things we have to do to fix our corrections system. And transparency will obviously contribute to it. My administration is committed, and our Commissioner Joe Pont is committed to a better correction system, fair treatment of our inmates, protecting the safety of those who work in our jails and the inmates in the jails. Our budget devotes substantial new resources to improving our jails, to addressing core problems, including mental health issues that so many of our inmates face. Commissioner Pont has a proven track record. He's nationally known as a great reformer in what is one of the toughest areas of public service. I want to thank him for having made the decision to come to New York City and take on such a big challenge. I admire him and I appreciate him for doing it, and he has my full support in this effort. And I'm confident that we're going to see positive changes. The bill we discussed today is a step in the right direction. It requires the Department of Correction to publish quarterly reports containing data on inmates who are housed in punitive segregation or in clinical alternatives to punitive segregation, otherwise known as CAPS programs. Sponsored by Councilmember Danny Drum. The data will begin to be collected on October 1st of this year, and the first report will be posted on the department's website January 20, 2015. And the report will focus on demographic issues, who ends up in these statuses, why, and what services do they receive, including medical services and mental health services. And the report will also include data on safety indicators such as use of force. I want to make clear that the City Council and the City Council staff collaborated closely with the City Hall team and with the Department of Corrections on this bill. I want to thank Councilmember Drum for that. We have a common interest in making sure the information is clear and usable and important and public. And we know it will be helpful not just to the oversight process, but to the work of the Department of Corrections. It will help us to manage the jails more effectively and address the problems that have been left to us, and will ultimately lead to better outcomes for inmates and corrections officers alike. We're pleased today to be joined by Commissioner Pont. Again, want to express my appreciation for all he is doing to reform a very tough situation. I'd like to welcome him to say a few words.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor. Councilman Drum, other City Council members, thank you for the opportunity to be here today. Since joining the Department of Corrections in April of this year, I've been very candid about the problems our agencies face. It's a very difficult task. It's been in a problem in decline probably more than 5 years, so it'll take some time for us to improve. My 40-year career in corrections has shown me that transparency is the most important part of any reform effort. Department of Corrections and City Hall staff worked with the City Council to ensure that Bill 292 would provide useful information to the public and help the department use data to better manage its punitive segregation areas. This legislation applies to 3 kinds of housing. The kind of housing that most people think of when they think of punitive segregation, which we are currently working to reform and expect to rely less and less in the coming months and years on this as a management tool in our facilities. Our restrictive housing units, which offer enhanced mental health support to mentally ill inmates and opportunities to shorten their stay for good behavior, and our clinical alternatives to punitive segregation units, which provides a therapeutic, non-punitive environment for seriously mentally ill inmates that has proven to be effective in reducing violence. We are already collecting some of this data outlined in this bill. Some of the other data will be required. We will require new protocols to capture the data, or we will need to gather it from other city agencies. But we are committed to applying the best evidence-based practice and sound management in the atmosphere of transparency, and will do whatever it takes to make our jails safer for staff and inmates alike, and to improve the long-term outcomes of our inmates incarcerated in our facility. This bill takes a step in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thanks very much. Again, want to thank the lead sponsor of the bill, Councilmember Danny Drum, who has worked so closely with us on so many crucial issues, always in a constructive and positive spirit. This was an important issue, deserved a lot of effort to get to where we got, and it's been consistent with his efforts to achieve real reform in a host of areas, and I want to thank him for his leadership. Councilmember Danny Drum.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I also want to thank Commissioner Pont for heeding the cries for reform of our city's jails. Your attention to this issue deserves recognition after years of intransigence from the previous administration. I owe my own attention to and knowledge about this issue to the tireless advocates, some of whom are in the room. Jennifer Parrish, Megan Crow-Rothstein of the Urban Justice Center, Sarah Kerr of the Legal Aid Society, Five Malam Ak of the Incarcerated Nation Campaign, and Joanna Miller of the New York Civil Liberties Union. I also want to thank Sebastian McGuire, my legal counsel, for all of his work on this issue, Rob Calandra, the counsel to the Committee on Criminal Justice and Fire, and Chair Liz Crowley of the same committee as well. I especially want to thank David Rothenberg, the founder of the Fortune Society, whose words ignited my passion for this issue. After I spoke to him about a friend still dealing with the trauma of solitary, he said, if you want to have an impact on the lives of incarcerated individuals, get rid of solitary confinement. We need to remember who Rikers Island holds, nearly all individuals who cannot make bail or receive short sentences, many of whom have mental health and substance abuse issues. I do not know one person who thinks that the solution to preparing these individuals for release is brutalizing them in unimaginable ways and then releasing them to their families and communities with little to no support. With the detailed data that we collect, let us work together to implement regulations that do not rely on extreme isolation and that foster a safer environment for everyone held or working at Rikers Island. Dispelling the darkness that has thus far shrouded the practice of punitive segregation is a significant first step in what I hope will be a radical rethinking of how our city deals with incarcerated individuals. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it. With that, I want to wait. We have a couple of people who are going to speak, and then I'll say a couple words in Spanish before we sign the bill. Want to invite to speak Jennifer Parrish of the Urban Justice Center.
Thank you. I work at the Urban Justice Center, and I'm also a member of the Jails Action Coalition. The use of solitary confinement is damaging both mentally and physically to all the individuals who are subjected to it, and it should not be the punishment that's routinely inflicted on people who are in our city jails. Unfortunately, it is. This practice, which has been described as torture by the UN Special Rapporteur on Torture, is routinely used on hundreds of people who are just sitting 8 miles away at Rikers Island. I thank Councilmember Drum and the mayor for this legislation. We believe it's a first step toward exposing this practice and ultimately ending it. Having data that clearly describes what's happening in the jails, what interventions are occurring, and how successful they are is critical. And I especially want to thank Councilmember Drum because he showed leadership on this issue starting about 2 years ago before this issue was on the front page of the New York Times. He recognized the travesty that was going on inside the city jails. So I thank you for that, and I thank you for this legislation.
Thank you very much. Next, I'd like to call up Five Malamik to speak to this issue.
Thank you, sir. My name is Five Mualim Ak. I've been wrongfully convicted. I spent 12 years incarcerated. Out of that, I spent 5 years in solitary confinement. This method is torturous, tears apart families, and breaks people down mentally, physically, and emotionally. I want to thank City Councilman Drum, who comes out to every town hall and every event that I do, speaks to people, but is a real city councilman because he literally appropriates things that he feels and sees the need for, which is what a representative is supposed to do. I also want to thank you, Your Honor. Since I first met you when we was doing mayoral forums last year, and I was hoping that you would be in office. And you told me, don't worry, change is going to come. And change has come. And I thank you for helping to make this a brighter, but also a safer system for New York. I believe that we should be an example for other states, and we need to stop looking for progressive models and look and seeing to be that progressive models. We have unique scenarios here. We have the world's largest county facility. We have more people incarcerated. We use solitary well over the national average. I also want to thank Commissioner Pont, because I believe in Commissioner Pont, and I believe in the change that he will make, and I'm committed to work 100% with him. I'm also the director of the Incarcerated Nation campaign, which is somewhat the only program that helps people that come directly out of solitary confinement, like myself, roughly 2,000 people in New York, return directly to population from solitary confinement with no help, no medical addressment, just $40, bus ticket, make sure you send up to parole, and make sure you beat it within 24 hours. I didn't make it. I had my first psychological breakdown right at the bus station, right, with 10 million commuters freaking me out. This is a system of torture, but this is a system that we're damaging our system. We're damaging our citizens. Today's prisoners is tomorrow's neighbors, so we must invest in the rehabilitation of them, but also the constant abuse that happens. So I thank you, Councilman Drum. This transparency is needed to make us a better and brighter New York, and thank you, Mayor, for overcoming this obstacle and being a great leader for the city. And I look forward to working with you and also to make this a better situation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you for remembering our discussions last year, and we're going to continue to do more to achieve these reforms. So thank you for your support. Just a moment in Spanish. La ley que firma hoy hace que el Departamento de Correcciones publique un informe trimestral en Internet sobre el uso de aislamiento como castigo en las cárceles de la ciudad. Esta ley dará un trato más justo y seguro para las personas que están en prisión. With that, let's sign the bill. Okay, three more, but all under the same topic. We're going to talk about Intro 6, Intro 148A, and Intro 441. All three fall into an important category known as good government. All these bills will help to make the election process more transparent, more filled with accountability, and more efficient. Intro 6 will provide voters more information on where candidates get support. Sponsored by Councilmember Dan Garodnick. Requires all literature, ads, and other communications paid for by a candidate for city office or on behalf of a candidate to disclose that it was paid for or authorized by such a candidate. So we'll hold candidates and their supporters accountable for the paid messages that bear their names. The second piece of legislation is Intro 148, increases disclosure requirements for independent expenditures in city elections, sponsored by Councilmember Brad Lander. And now, in recent years, all over the country, we've seen an influx of massive amounts of spending by independent groups. In many cases, most cases, the contributors are unknown to the public. Contributors sometimes use generic names, and organizations hide the identities of the individuals and interests behind the effort. Intro 148 goes a long way to fixing that problem. It requires entities making independent expenditures on city elections to reveal to the Campaign Finance Board the identities of the owners of their contributing organizations. In addition, it requires that independent entities producing election-related communications must include those identities of those backers in the communications, the identities of the top 3 donors, and also must direct individuals to a new city campaign finance website where voters will be able to get more information about who these organizations are and what they're doing. This legislation will go a long way to making the electoral process more transparent and democratic. Finally, Intro 441. Sponsored by Councilmember Ben Kalis. The bill aligns with the administration's efforts to create more efficient and fiscally responsible government. It allows the Campaign Finance Board to forego publishing and mailing physical voter guides when the 2 following conditions are met. 1, there's no contested elections for offices of mayor, public advocate, borough president, comptroller, and city council. And 2, 60 days or more prior to the election, there's no determination that there'll be a specific proposal on the ballot. The bill addresses what is a fairly rare circumstance, but it's an important circumstance because when this happens and it goes unaddressed, it costs the taxpayers over $3 million to send out guides when in fact there may not be any pertinent race or ballot measure for the guide to address. So it's a waste of taxpayer dollars at a time that we have so many important issues to address. This bill will make sure that that waste does not occur. And then, if at any point late in the process there is a ballot proposal referendum, the CFB still has the option of publishing a voter guide on its website. That gives an alternative in those rare circumstances so the public can be well informed. I think it's a good step forward for the city. We're joined by the bill's sponsor, Councilmember Ben Kalis. I want to thank him for the energy he put into these reforms. I'd like to invite him to speak. You don't need that. You're good. Okay.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for signing these into law. Some people campaign on change. You seem to be the change you wish to see in the world, which is a big deal, and we're getting a lot done. A lot done. I'm chair of governmental operations. We already have these 3 bills, and I'm starting to know that I have to spend 1 day a month with you at these bill signings, and I just want to thank you for really making the reforms happen with such speed and alacrity and just bringing the change here now. So thank you, and you're quickly becoming one of my favorite constituents.
There you go. Thank you. I appreciate that. And
if I may speak quickly to the bill.
Yes.
So I want to thank the mayor for his leadership on this voter guide bill. It's a common sense fix that uses technology to save our city money and empowers the Campaign Finance Board to carry out its important work. It can waste the city millions of dollars, in fact, $3 million in valuable city resources if we obligate the Campaign Finance Board to print and mail a voter guide for a late submitted referendum that may or may not be on the ballot. In these rare cases, offering the voter guide only online will allow residents to easily access information without wasting necessary money and time. This is another example of government using technology to create a smarter, better city. It's fair and common sense. I'd like to thank the mayor's office. I'd like to thank the legislative division of the city council, David Seitzer, our committee council, as well as the New York City Campaign Finance Board for their support on this. Mayor de Blasio and Speaker Mark Viverito have shown continued commitment to a smart 21st century government that works for New Yorkers. I thank them for passing the voter guide bill. The voter guide is a necessary tool that engages New Yorkers and allows them to make informed choices. We should empower the Campaign Finance Board to offer their services efficiently and thoroughly. This is a small change that will make a real difference in New York City's elections, and I thank the mayor and speaker for making it happen.
Thank you very much. Thank you again for your leadership. And I do want to note that I share your view that council's been extraordinarily productive, and we all have a lot more work to do. But we're setting a very intense pace and expect more to come. I also want to thank Amy Loprest, who is here, the Executive Director of the Campaign Finance Board, for the work she does and her team does. And we hope that this legislation will improve upon that work. We've got 3 people signed up to speak. First is Brent Ferguson, Brennan Center for Justice.
Hi, my name is Brent Ferguson. I'm a counsel at the Brennan Center for Justice, and first I want to thank the mayor for his support and for the sponsors of the bills as well. I'm speaking mainly for intros 6 and 148A today. I'd just like to make a couple of points about these bills that the Brennan Center really strongly endorses. They start to take steps that increasing transparency in the city elections, and this is especially important at a time when outside spending has really exploded, especially since the Citizens United decision about 4.5 years ago. So while the Supreme Court said we can't limit this independent spending, the best thing that we can do and what we should do is make sure voters have all the information they can about any political advertising. And when we saw $16 million of outside spending in city elections last fall, voters often didn't have the information that they needed about a lot of those groups. And Councilmember Lander's bill will help change that, and we hope for the next city election that won't be the case. And also importantly, the Supreme Court has clearly said that bills like this are constitutional. They don't infringe on constitutional rights. We can't limit the spending, but what we can do is make sure that voters have as much information as possible, and this bill does that. It doesn't create too much of a burden, and it only targets the really big spenders that we care most about learning about. So thanks again, I appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Now I'd call up Lauren George of Common Cause.
I just wanted to thank the mayor and the city council for the hard work on this bill. We've been working, Common Cause has been working on independent expenditures and getting money out of politics for a while, but this is the best that we can do, and we're really grateful that we can let voters cut through the ads and have a better understanding to make well-informed decisions. The next election cycle is going to be different, and we're really looking forward to bringing the sunshine in and following the money. So thank you very much.
Amen. Pithy and clear. Thank you. Finally, Rachel Faust of Citizens Union.
Hello, I'm Rachel Foss. I'm the Director of Public Policy for Citizens Union, a nonpartisan good government group dedicated to making democracy work for all New Yorkers, and that's exactly what we're doing today. We're making the process better for voters in New York City. Transparency is at the heart of making sure that voters are informed about the decisions that they can make. And intros 6 and 148 are pulling back the curtain for voters so they can make informed choices and have all the tools they need on election day. And we also support the bill regarding the voter guide, knowing that in some cases, publishing a guide with a proposition that might not be on the ballot would cause more confusion, more harm than good. So I just would like to thank Mayor de Blasio for signing the bills, Council Members Kalos, Grodnick, and Lander for their leadership. The New York City campaign finance system is a model in the country, and we're ensuring that it stays that way. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just a moment of Spanish. Estoy firmando 3 leyes que harán nuestro proceso de elecciones más transparente, responsable y eficiente. Estas leyes ayudan a que los neoyorquinos tengan el gobierno realmente democrático que merecen. With that, let us sign all three bills.
Liberating.